you asked me to share my story, and I don't know where to start, but I left it to Baba, that whatever comes to my mind and Baba inspires me, I say it. Otherwise, I haven't written down the whole story or something like that. I'm very fortunate that I was born in a Baba lover family. And both my mother and my father, they loved Baba when I was born. So my mother actually happened to be the neighbor of Esfandiar Vesali. So he was married with his wife and he had 3 sons. And my mother lived with her father, Fereydun, Dastur, Shah Fereydun, Vahidi, and who was a Dastur actually. So I'm also a Dastur, and if I want to practice, I can. I just have to go and get some training, and I have to follow the good words, good deeds, and good thoughts, and I can practice if I want. So my mom was one daughter among 4 sons, and she was very dear to her mother and father. So when they were growing up, they were close, as a neighbor, like 10 minutes walk to Esfandiar's residence. So as a child, she used to go to Esfandiar, and they had displayed Baba photo, a beautiful Baba photo. Baba is on the chair, sitting like that with a little booty, like a tie, but yeah. And they were, anytime that somebody asked him, so who you going to get married to, Shirin? Because there were, all the neighbors had boys, at that time, and she was the only girls among like 7, 8 boys growing up, And then, so choose which boy you're going to marry. And my mom would get always like frustrated and says, I'm going to marry to this man, pointing to Baba's photo. I'm going to marry him. The handsome one, I'm going to marry him. Not you guys, you go ahead. She just didn't like to be teased and all that. I'm going to marry him. And she was a little girl, So then she had a good, you see how the connection was that from my mother's mother, her name was Paridokht, and she had an uncle, Ustad Khodaram, and it was known among Zoroastrians that he was a spiritual man. He was like very saintly. And he was living in Bombay. And it happened, that's the story, that when Meher Baba got intoxicated by the kiss of Baba Jan, Shirin Mai didn't know what to do. So suddenly, in the community, Zoroastrian community, a lady says, why don't you take your son Mervan to this saint, Ustad Khodaram, and he would help him if it's mental issue or something, he will, help him out to come out. If it's a spiritual or something, then he will give him a guide, guidance. So then Shirin Mai actually takes Meher Baba to Ustad Khodaram, and this is all the story. And Ustad Khodaram, he says welcome, and then have a conversation, and they all have tea and all that. And he very much respects Mehwan, and then he tells his mother that Shirin Mai, your son is in a higher spiritual ground than I am, and I cannot help him. you take him to Sai Baba of Shirdi, and he's able to help him out. But do not worry, where he is, he's in a good place. You know, he's in the hand of Yazdan, he's at, not to worry, you just do that. And I can't help him. He has a higher spiritual status. So that was the connection of my uncle, my grandmother's, from my mother's side, uncle, telling to Shirin Mai to send Baba to Sai Baba. And now I can see that because Shirin Mai, being a Zoroastrian, you know, she never would take her son to a Muslim or to a Hindu. That's why, you know, I think it was the link by like a Zoroastrian to tell, okay, now you go to this.
And what was Sai Baba? What was Sai Baba?
Sai Baba was Muslim. Yes, so by herself, otherwise she would not take Baba to a Muslim or, you know, to a Hindu. But I think that was a link that Baba made it that way. So, but what happened was he also had his own group of murids. And my grandfather, Shah Fereydun, and my grandmother, Firuze, they were also, you know, his followers, you know, because of the family connections and all that. And at that time, he said that, I want you all come to Iran with me from Bombay. They were living in Bombay, and you know, they were in a good, I think, affluent family because my grandma, you know, knew English and you know, in a nice school, English school, as well as she knew piano at that time, and she knew a lot of embroidery, you know, at that time. And her art was very good, and she actually got a pendant of Zoroaster by the hand of Gandhi, my grandmother, and which we have that, a little pendant, which was given by Gandhi to my grandmother, you know, for appreciation of, you know, if you are talented in art or music or, you know. So that's interesting. So, you know, they all moved to, what happened, they rented or hired driver, and they got some trucks, and there were 6 families, Zoroastrian families, that they all, like a caravan, left Bombay, and it took them like 21 days or something to get to Yazd, to Tehran. No, not to Tehran, to Yazd, Iran. So my grandma was pregnant with my mother. When she left India, she was 3 months pregnant. And then my mom was born in Yazd. With this group of travelers, the lady who married a Spaniard was also in this group. So a Spaniard at that time was living in Yazd and doing the farming, or, you know, and he didn't want to get married, and that was right after the Prem Ashram. Baba closed the school, so he sent all the boys back home. So he was there, you know, with the family in Yazd. And this lady, her name was also Shirin, same name as my mom, but it's different Shirin. She happened to be a Spaniard's cousin, so they also moved, and then they ended up getting married. And that's how we got the link back of Meher Baba through a Spaniard to my mother's family. And a year after my mom was born, Ustad Khodaram intuitively felt that we have to go to Tehran, so they all moved to Tehran from Yazd, and they purchased a large property in northern part of Tehran called Shemiran, and because he had predicted that his tomb shrine is going to be next to a lake, which was feeding through the aquifer. Underground water was feeding the lake there. And so the whole family came, and then the way at that time, there wasn't any money exchange or something like that. So what they have done is they had sold their properties in Bombay and made it to gold, and then they buy the whole village with the farmers in it, with the villagers in it, with those gold they brought. And then they were like 6 families, and each one had their own land. So my grandfather, Shah Feridun, and his family had their own land, and Espanyol had their own land and property, and he started his family. So therefore, since my mom's early childhood or babyhood, they knew of Meher Baba, and Baba's picture was always in Espanyol's home. At that time, Baba had mentioned that he would call me a Sadguru, and then he hasn't been declared himself as avatar. So they just knew him as Morshed or Sadguru. So that's a part of my mom's story and connection with Baba. Then she also remembers that when she was like 8 years old, Ustad Khodaram's wife, her name was Khorshid Mai, also Khorshid Mai was a very good schoolmate, friend of Mehera Irani's mom.
Daulat Mai.
Thank you. Daulat Mai. So they were so much connected together. So Khorshid Mai and Daulat Mai used to be like since school time, like a good friend. So she invited Daulat Mai to come and stay to Kashanak, to the village. They named it Kashanak. Actually, those group named it whole village Kashanak.
This is on the edge of Tehran?
Yeah, it's actually on the northern part of Tehran that eventually it got very prosperous because Shah of Iran decided to move his palace to our neighborhood because it was a good weather and close to, and it was kind of a mountain, So she invited, Daulat Mai came to Kashanak and stayed like 2-3 months. Like my mom remembers, summertime, and they were all talking Gujarati. So all those ladies who came, they were all speaking Gujarati. And that's why my mom learned Gujarati, and then I knew Gujarati when I got to India, first time in 1983. So then I could understand and communicate with the Mandalis in Gujarati. Fantastic. And not English. My English was like boom, and it still is boom.
That's good.
Yeah. My mom remembers of Daulat Mai that it was, she didn't speak at all because it was Baba's order to be silent. But she said she was so beautiful and so sweet, and she had white hair and tie, and she had given my mom so much love, and my mom remembered that she brushed her hair when she was like 8 years old, and waved her hair, my mom's, and she just loved her. Every morning she used to just run into a Spaniard's home and have a nice visit and conversation with Doratman and all the older, lovers of God, basically, of the family. So that's her part of the story and connection with Baba. Now what happened, my father died when I was 8 years old. So I didn't have that much story from my father's side of family until recently, that my cousin Bahram Namiranian, who's my cousin from my father's side, has come. Is Azita's father. Yeah.
Oh,
He's actually my
Isn't that something? I didn't know that.
My cousin, he came and then he's telling me all these stories that I said, oh my God, I never heard, because I always been stayed with my mother's side of the family, So he did mention that what happened, the Zoroastrians believe in saints, and they, because of Zoroaster teaching of good words, good deeds, and good thoughts, they try to be as pure as possible in order, so they don't try not to harm anyone, to live a very simple and dedicated life. So, and devote to Yazdan, devote their life to Yazdan. And they also believe in sainthood, or, they believe in the spiritual hierarchy. They believe that a man can become God in a sense, so same as the Sufis, as the dervishes, Dervish, it's actually deep in the culture, comes from the ancient time of Zoroaster. Then my grandfather, his name was Jamshid, he was an interesting character. My cousin says that the way he did work or trade, no exchange with money. Somebody would tell him to do this and he would do that, and then instead of collecting money, they would offer something for the family, like food or something like that. And the door was never locked. It was always open. Whoever comes, eats, takes, and then he also would go and, stay with other people and then enjoy their food and all that. So there wasn't any restriction on that part. And he also, there is a Pir Sabz, or it's a pilgrim site of Zoroastrian. It's also been known as Pir Chek by the Muslims, but it was actually a Zoroastrian. And Pir Sabz is a story of this princess, a Zoroastrian princess, when the Arabs basically rush into Iran and conquer, and they start killing and all that. This girl didn't want to be trapped, and basically wanted to keep her purity and didn't want men to touch him or something like that. So this girl, she ran into the mountain with her horse, And then there were other, the Arabs were following her because she was a princess, they wanted to capture her. But then she prays to God, to Ahura Mazda, and this mountain opens and then closes, and then it takes the girl, the virgin girl inside the mountain, so it saves it from, the bad energy, So it got saved, and then not until a long time ago, you could even see the green scarf of the girl coming out of the mountain. So you could still see that. And so it was very holy. And then when the mountain kind of took the girl as to host the girl, then the water started to come. The water was flowing, and this is in the middle of the desert, the mountain by the desert. And when the water started coming, then the vegetation started to grow. And then they made some rooms and all that, and they made it as a pilgrimage. And I remember it has its own season that Zoroastrian go, like in the start of the summer usually, and then they just sing and pray and praise and do the prayers, do the Avesta and all that. And there is always a caretaker, of the property and all that. And usually a holy person dedicated to that, never has been married, either a man or a woman. And one of the, Baba boys from Premashram time, one of the twins, I don't know if it was Khosrow or Khodayar. I think it was Khodayar. Actually stayed. Baba told him to go back to Pir Sabs and stay there and do my work there. So he stayed there for many years, and he had a vegetarian garden and all vegetarian diets and all that. So I remember when I was maybe around 15, 16 years old, I went there for the first time to Pir Sabs with my mom, and the lady who was, an older lady who was taking care of that Pir, say, "Oh, you girls, the Pir gonna be happy to see you girls. It's supposed to be a virgin girls, around 14, 15, 16. Come here, and you have to clean up, because if you do the cleaning up, that will make the Pir happy, and then you're gonna see more water flowing." So here I am, and then my cousins and other girls, and then we have some boys too, but then boys useless, just the girls. So we end up, we pull up our hands, and then we started to scrubbing and cleaning and playing with waters, and So we did that for almost a whole day, 9 a.m. would say till 3 p.m. or something like that. And then magically, the water started to come and pour and pour. It was so unbelievable before and after. And then the lady told us, "Come, didn't I tell you the water, the Pir, it responds to the purity of the woman, of the girl or something like that." I said, "Okay." So what happened was, my grandfather, Jamshid, he was also a seeker in his own way.
Is that your mommy's daddy?
No, this is not my father's
Okay, good.
side, my father's side. So he goes with his camel, he goes to Pir Sabs, to do homage as a pilgrimage. And then when he was coming back with his camel, he had collected some firewood, and he also had that kind of a container of water, which is made, at that time it was made of sheep skin. You know, they make it very natural. And so it was next to the firewood, and then apparently in the middle of his path to come, and it's like a whole day you have to walk, you know, in the heat of the desert in order to come back to his village. Middle of the day, just decided to stop and have something to eat and drink. And then he notices that the firewood had poked into that water container, and everything, all the water has dripped. So he got very sad, you know, that, oh my God, how I'm going to survive? I still have to go, you know, for the rest till night, and I'm not, how can I take that? I'm already so thirsty, and how can I take it? So he thought what he's going to do. He says, okay, well, he unloaded the camel and kind of hailed the camel to go back to the village, thinking that, okay, the villagers going to see my camel, so they're going to send somebody to look after me. So he had this pile of wood, put it on the ground, and under the shadow of that firewood, he lay down, you know, to seek some comfort of the shadow from the sun. And he just fell asleep. He was exhausted, you know. And he just fell asleep, and he had this dream that somebody is calling him, Jamshid, Jamshid, and he opens his eyes, and this man that he never has seen before, who knew his name, just sitting next to him by his side, and he offers him water. Here, take. So he takes the water, and then he drinks and drinks until his thirst is completely gone, and then his eyes getting clear so he can see the holy man, you know. And he says that he was all in white, and I saw him. So then he told Jamshid that, you know, now you go and tell, your camel is here. So the camel has come. Your camel is here. Now go home, pointing to the camel. So he gets up to take his firewood, put it back on the camel, and then turns to say thank you to the man, and he disappeared. You know, there wasn't any trace of him left. He was gone. So then he makes it home, of course, and he wasn't thirsty anymore, and the camel wasn't thirsty, everybody was fed, you know. So, but then he happened to live for 124 years, my grandfather, 124 years, which was magical. And he always said it's because of the water of life that holy man gave me in the desert, because I was dying, and it was the blessing that he gave me. That's why I'm, you know, my strength and my health and my long life is because of that water that I got. So then my mother, actually, my grandma, her name was also Firuze. After his first wife passed away, then my grandpa marries my grandma, and then they have 8 kids together, and my father happened to be the second child or the first son of the family. So so now how they come in contact with Meher Baba was that it's very interesting. I think that guy who he thought the desert was actually working as Baba's agent, one of the agents. Why? Because I heard a story from Nushirwan Anzar that on one of Baba's trip to Iran, when Baba was traveling in the desert of Yazd with his men in a car, suddenly Baba tells his men to stop the car. So they have to stop the car, and Baba gets off of his car, and he actually starts running into the desert toward the mountain there. He just starts running non-stop, and then all the Mandali, just following him, running. And then suddenly, from far distance, they see this person wearing all white on a white horse, coming toward, out of nowhere, just suddenly appeared, coming toward Baba, and he stops the horse, very nice, a strong man, and he stops the horse, and Baba, standing, and then the guy starts waving, and Baba is waving, both smile and happy, and then as fast as he came, he also disappears. He goes back, with the horse into the mountain. And Baba said that he's my agent.
Excuse me, Mary.
Yes.
Do you think this was 1924?
I do not know, but
Exactly.
intuitively I'm feeling that it's probably the same man that Baba have seen.
Okay.
But that man, that agent might have lived 100 years. I don't know how old he would be, how old. But I think he was the same one who helped my grandfather in the same desert, in the same area that Baba have encountered with the agent. And Baba told that he's a Khufeneshin. And Khufeneshin means someone who lives in a cave, because there is a desert there of Yazd, and then there is a little hillside, and there is what happened. It's been told that when the Arabs come from Saudi Arabia to conquer Persia, some of the Zoroastrian family go and hide in those mountains, and they take all the grains and seeds, and they started to just live in those caves and have kind of a civilization there, continue with the civilization, but then they chose not to come out, come out of where they were. So Baba says he's a Khufeneshin, right? Like he is a caveman. He is living in the cave, but in a good, white dress, a nice horse, healthy, no problem. And there is also other stories among Zoroastrians which can be linked to the same agent, because my cousin again, Bahram, said that his father's side, his grandfather actually saw the same man in the white dress once, and then he came, that man came to his garden back in village of Yazd, one of the villages of Yazd. But the second time that he came, his grandfather was in veranda, and then his son was watering the fruit trees, and then the vegetable garden and all that. And there is not that much rain in Yazd. It's a desert town, basically, and all the water comes from underground. So you have to get the water, and everybody has their own limited time to use that water, every family. And at that time, they had planted a lot of watermelon, and it was like summertime. So this man, the son sees him, and he happened to be a in his teens or something. He sees this man that tell your father I said hi. And then he just was washing his hand in that water that is going to water the whole garden. And so the son, didn't even know him. I mean, a man had suddenly appeared in their property out of nowhere, and he doesn't know him. So he runs back to tell his son, his father, and then his father says, "Oh, go and bring him. Go, I want to see him. Go and bring him," knowing that, feeling intuitively that is the same agent. So when the son runs to go and get hold of the agent and bring him, he was disappeared. He wasn't there. But then the story goes that since he washed his hand in that water, and they used that water to water all the watermelon, that watermelons were so performing so great that usually when a watermelon bush gives fruit, then it dies. But then it wouldn't die. It just constantly was bringing watermelon. And even in the winter time, which was like frost everywhere, it was like cold, still it was flowering and bringing watermelon. So I asked my cousin that, "Oh my God, that would have been a fortune for your family. You should have cut it and sell it in the market, high price." He says, "No. It's meant to be for the whole village." So my father was they were all giving it away. So this is how it works. The blessing, when you receive from God, we don't take advantage of it. We just pass it. So so I also felt intuitively that this man was also the same agent, and he probably was in the fourth plane of consciousness, because then they can help others through their energy, by providing water or life and so forth. And meanwhile, progress in the path. That's their way of progressing in the path. If they are in the fourth plane of consciousness, is just use that power in helping and flourishing and feeding people and bringing water to somebody who is dying. So then, my grandfather, he was. When he was 124 years, he couldn't stand up, but then he could, on his knees and hands, he could crawl.
Wow.
He was still had that energy to crawl, to go and take care of the garden. So that's amazing, what energy, what kind of.
How old were you, Mehernoush, when your grandfather died?
I guess before I was born, he was dead already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, so the story is my grandmother happened to be his second wife, because his first wife passed away. And my father happened to be the first son. And it's been tradition that the first son, it takes, the responsibility of the whole family, all other kids are after them. So they sent my father to Bombay, they had some relative there, to work and to send some money. And what happened was my father, he was 18 or 19, and this is based on what Bahram is telling me. And Bahram is another 30 years or so older than me, so he has more time spent with family and all that. So he goes to Bombay, and then and I didn't know that, this part is actually, it also revealed to me newly. I only knew until just recently that My father was, that I've been told by my mom, that my father was working as a waiter in a Irani chai kind of restaurant, a tea restaurant, and Meher Baba and his men came one time, and my father had the opportunity to meet him as well as to serve him. So this is all I heard. But just recently, during the storm that happened, Florence,
Yes.
gave us a chance to communicate. And he said, which actually I'm very happy to know that when my father went to Bombay, when he was in teens, 18, 19, he ended up becoming a partner with another Zoroastrian man. His name was Hormuz Yar. And they started a chai restaurant. And then they were selling, bread and cookies and chai and all that. And I just could imagine that my father being were born in Iran as the way that their hospitality of offering everything. I could just imagine here Baba is there and his men Mandali are there, and my father is just, because he's being the owner, now he has more power to offer, like bringing the bread and the jams and the sweets and the tea and more, and saying no more, no money, no. I can feel that, in my father's personality of lots of love and giving and all that. And perhaps one of the reasons that none of us have gone broke is because of Meher Baba's grace. Ups and downs of, you never know, but it's
Well,
just
you're
nice.
weaving, Mehernoush and I have been talking a lot about Prem-Ashram days, and this is the interlocking between Persia and India. Meher Baba's family, we all know, mother and dad were from Persia, right? And in these geographic areas and the connections that Mehernoush is talking about, that's Baba's descendants came from there.
Yeah.
So it's
the same
just
cultures,
amazing.
the same
Yeah.
language,
Yeah.
the same,
Yeah.
love and greed and,
And and Baba loved Persia. He, in the little bit of Prem-Ashram research that I've done, his connection to Persia was very strong in the 20s because of his father. He couldn't wait to get back to his father's home village, which was very close to Yaz.
Yeah,
Very close to Yaz, right? And his father was the original seeker that had Baba as a son. That just couldn't find, got the message that your son will be the answer to your seeking.
Yeah. So now what's happened is, like, my father is there and working, owning and operating a restaurant and sending money, and then he likes to get married apparently, and then he falls in love with his own cousin, but then his cousin goes to college and falls in love with a Christian boy and marries him, but then the marriage didn't work out and it broke after 1 year. So my father goes back again to the house to ask for the hand of the same woman. He loved her apparently. But then the lady says, I'm never going to get married. I'm done with marriage because I had a very bad experience, no more. And she never did. She never did. But then my father was like, okay, now what should I do, So a friend of him tells him, why don't you just walk on the little hillside of Bombay? There is a saint there and he can guide you. So he goes, and then he was just passing because he was kind of reluctant, to connect to all different kind of saints and yogis and all that. He was kind of reluctant to even go close to that person. But he was just going up, and then the saint, or whoever he was, maybe he was Baba's agent, I don't know, he points to him with a finger, and he tells his name. Ardeshir, Lord Kalantari, the son of Jamshid and Firuze from, Yazd. Your destiny to get married is with Shirin Vahidi. He even mentioned my mom's name. Shirin Vahidi, who lives in the mountain of Shemiran in Kashanak, and she's a daughter of the Dastur. This is who you're going to get married. And he's like, it was a little, he didn't even go to question or anything, but then the guy blurted it out, So then he comes back to Iran. And of course his family wanted to find him a wife, okay, hi, but this. And then he shares that, a story, what happened to him when he went to the hillside of Bombay, and then this saint is giving him, information to go and marry this lady, And then so his sisters and his mother kind of tried to investigate who that woman is, and they never knew each other. They never met.
Wow.
And then they end up finding about my mom and his family in Tehran. So they lived in Yazd, and my mom lives, upper portion of Tehran. And my grandfather just basically, expired. He passed away. And my mother at that time, she was kind of getting older. I think she was 24 when she got married. And for that time, I think it was a little old, which doesn't make sense. So she, they have to find a wife, a husband or something. So what happened was, then non-announced, here my father, his brothers, his mother, and his sisters, they all bring like trays of dry fruits and nuts and pomegranate and just name it, lork and sweets, and put it on their thing. And they knock on the door at my mom, and then they come, we have come to receive our bride. We have come to take our bride. And then my grandma, what are you talking about? My daughter don't belong to you, what's happening? So they were sharing their stories, what happened, and this is like the first time my mom and my dad, they see each other, Yeah, so my mom feels that he's a good hearted man, and he was actually very good hearted. It's been known, he didn't live long, but the time that he lived, he never lied. And everyone used to come to him to get advice. He knew how to read palm, and he also knew to predict. But later on, when he really got devoted to Baba, he internally felt through Meher Baba that he should stop that, stop reading futures for everybody. And he stopped it. And then he was very calm, very posed, because my mom was the energy, my mom was, but he was the most calm and posed person. And every time, I remember as a child, every time that we had a fever, come out with a cold or a flu or something, at night when he would come from work, my mom says, oh, Mehernoush has a fever, or Behnaz has a fever. And he used to just come, and we are in our bed, and then he would take my paw, a little finger, thumb, and then he would say the Zoroastrian prayer, and then I would fall asleep. But then in the morning, fever was all gone. I go to school. No, nothing. I mean, it would just remove. You know. Yeah. So.
Do you remember him? You were only 8 when your dad.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
do
He
remember?
yes, and I remember he was always giving. So anytime that I wanted something and I couldn't get it from my mom, I would go to my dad because I knew he would give it to me. Yeah. So he was very good-hearted, and he realized who Baba was. And both my mom and dad, they actually went in 1969 to the Grand Darshan. Baba, they wanted to go earlier, and Baba said, just wait, and I will call you, you know. And the communication was through Aloba, and then my mom had all those dreams and vision of Baba, and I want to come, and so eventually, you know, they went in 1969 Darshan in May, and they also took both of my grandmothers. So yeah, so both grandmothers, and they both. And I remember I was young, but you know, 3.5 years old or something like that. I stayed with my aunt. My aunt was watching after me and my other sister, and Golnaz had to stay basically, you know, around the house because she was going to school at that time. So I remember when they come back, you know, and then my mom came, and then she grabbed me and hugged me, and I felt so much love, you know, as a child. I felt, my God, you know, it's too much. How did my mom got so much love to give me?
Yeah.
You know, it was like so much blessing, like she was hugging us for the first time. Like she never had hugged us this much. Like, you know, embrace and big hug and all that. And then she remembers when she went and she met the woman Mandali, especially Mehra. You know, my mom gave Mehra her gold bangles, you know, just intuitively took it off and gave it to her, and then she took it. Mehra took my mom's bangles. And then my mom was sobbing and sobbing, you know, when she went to Guru Prasad, I think, and bowed down and Baba, and she was sobbing. And Mehra came and held her hand and said, but Shireen, why are you crying? I have to cry. See, I'm not crying. Why are you crying? And you know, my mom said, I don't know. It just comes. It's just love. You know, it's not sadness. It's love. But you know, also the missing Meher Baba is also. Yeah. So that's you know, the story. Yeah, I remember, you know, when my mom was pregnant with me, she was in, Baba still was alive. She was in the body at that time. So my mom actually sees a vision of Meher Baba. Baba comes to our house veranda, appears, and my mom was sitting at that time, I think. She was sitting on the floor doing some, you know, like vegetable, cutting some vegetable or something. So she sees Baba, Baba, and then she starts to cry. She starts to cry outside Baba. And Baba's message for my mother was, just love me, just to love me. Like, don't worry about loving anybody else. You just love me. You just love me. You know, in Farsi, Baba said it. In Farsi, to faqat mano dost dashte bash. That means you just love me. And then I being in my mom's tummy at that time, I feel perhaps that was the time that he brought my soul into my mom, and he also gave me the same message. Jai Baba.